All right, everybody. As you can see, we're a little bit in the process of tearing up the spot because we need to get to those cracks right there in the walls. All right, so don't be afraid if you find out that there's wallpaper on your walls and you need to repair this place. All right, so let me show you what I'm talking about. So you're gonna see something like this, okay? It looks like a crack, which it is, but it's under wallpaper, okay? When you purchase an older home, you're gonna need to renovate it, and cracks like that, I mean the light's not so good, are essentially a crack like this that's just hiding behind this thick wallpaper and layer of paint that's over it. And so if you get close to it and you touch it, it kind of like pushes in a little because there's paper over it. And now you need to tear everything up. Don't be afraid. It's not so difficult because you need to get to these things. You need to get to these cracks. You need to open them up and you need to repair them properly. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a slap job, as I call it, by just spackling over, right? You would see that. So sorry, this doesn't look so good. Let me see if I have. Here's a better example. Here's a good one. All right, so you got a crack on the wall right there. When you touch it, it kind of moves a little bit. It's because there's wallpaper over this wall, and then it's been painted over. Okay, so you have multiple layers on this wall. Repairing this by spackling over it, not the right way to do it. If you want to get it done right, you have to tear up all of that existing layer. You need to get in there real deep, get to the lathe, and then you need to properly fill it in and then spackle it over, level it, skim coat this wall, and then you're not going to have this problem for a while. I mean, a long time, hopefully. Otherwise, any other kind of fix that you're going to do is going to be very temporary, and there's no point of doing temporary jobs. I mean, if you're doing it for somebody else, maybe some people like to do it that way, but if you're doing it for yourself especially, do it well, make it last. All right, so right now we got all of this torn up. Tore up all of this pretty quickly, actually. And I've located even cracks that were not visible, so you didn't even know they were there, but they would eventually find their way to the surface. And so that would be repairs that you'd have to do later on that you don't really necessarily want to do. You want to get it all done all at once, not worry about it for a long time. And now, let me show you how simple it is. All right, there's a lot of tools that you need. All right, there it is. That's all the tools you need. Okay, right there, 5 in 1. What do? You just get at it and just peel it off. Comes right off. That's it. Just keep going. All right. With a little bit of practice, you can be able to get larger bits and you tear them off, and that's it. That's all it is to it. And then eventually you are completely done removing all this stuff, and then you need to get to your cracks. Once you get to your cracks, you want to get in there. You want to tear those up. If you have a loose spot, you want to break that out. Take it out. Clean out these, because you're going to put a new base in there, base coat. You want to make sure it keys in there, so this becomes solid again. Very thin cracks like this, if they're super thin, just check if there's any motion. I'd still tear it up, still fill it in regardless. Anything that moves, seriously, obviously you want to do a little bit more permanent job. Use some sort of plaster repair technique. Maybe embed some plaster washers into the wall. Sink them in there a little bit so that when you cover them, they'll be flush. You do that by kind of making a hole for the caps to sink into. Kind of like doing a countersink. Let me just explain it to you a little simpler. Here you go. Use a bit like this. All right. Use the 1-inch bit. That's going to make a nice little round indent. You go just a little in, and then you use a plaster washer, plaster repair washer, okay? Here's a plastic one, there's metal ones. You could use whichever. Just make sure you know what diameter you're buying, and then you buy the right bit. Basically, and you just drill in just the thickness of what you need. And when you put it in there, it's locked in. And then when you cover it up with your base and then your top and then your joint compound and everything else, you end up with a pretty solid crack that you know for a fact was never going to reappear again. And that's that. So that's how we fix these things. And then some of these are, you can see like there's very little motion, but you still want to tear it up and fill it in, just because this crack still has some pressure built up into it. And so if there's any pressure built up into it, which means these two walls are kind of squeezing together, that caused a crack. Inside there's a little bit of a denser spot. Get that stuff out. Get it out, because it's loose, it's not tight in there, and just fill it in again. And at least you'll relieve that stress. And that's pretty much it. That's the process of removing wallpaper from a wall. Old wallpaper that you might have not even known that's there, to get to the layer that's under, to actually properly open it up so that it can be repaired. All right. Once you properly repair it, first I'll fill it up with a base coat. What I use is actually large format tile mortar, which is essentially the stuff that they use to mount giant tiles, the largest tiles that they put up, like porcelain, marble, whatever. I think it's for porcelain tile, the one that I use. And it's if you want to put like a large format tile, like a 2x2 or a 3x3. I use that kind of mix as the base, because I essentially think of this wall as giant tile. And so that's a good base, and then the top coats over that at the end are just joint compound. And then after that, everything gets skim coated. Once everything's skim coated, you're gonna end up with pretty much the most perfect flat ceiling or wall that you could ever imagine, okay? And this thing should not have any cracks, it shouldn't sag, it should be very solid, especially if you embedded anything in there, like those washers. If you had like a real problem, for example, this ceiling right here, it's got already 3 coats on it. I mean, all of these walls have already been redone. And there's probably at least 100 washers inside the ceiling. This used to be a popcorn ceiling, and they didn't use the kind of popcorn we know about today, which is very easily removable by just getting it wet. This is the stuff where they took paint, they mixed it with sand, and then they did a trowel technique. And so when you try to remove this stuff, it's pretty much hard as stone. You can't chip it off, you can't get it off. So really all you had to do was cover it up. And there was a lot of cracks inside the ceiling that this popcorn was hiding. And on top of it also, the ceiling was extremely crooked. And so it had to be leveled off. And so you do that by getting chalk lines from corner to corner, snapping them off. You see if you have any sags, and then you're gonna have to go in one direction, and then you do it the other way, and you just keep going until you have straight corners, straight lines in the edges. So that's pretty much it. I mean, if I showed you the condition of this room before, it was beyond rough. And so there's a right way to do it, and that's pretty much getting it to look really ugly before you make it look gorgeous. All right, that's all my advice. Any questions, let me know. Thanks.